The second night in Minneapolis, a suburb there, erupted in violence, and it is a huge story at this hour. After Sunday's deadly police shooting of a black man, 20-year-old Dante Wright, police are using tear gas on unruly protesters who set off fireworks and looted stores. And they were hurling projectiles at police, so it got a bit more violent rather than just the looting. Some officers were injured, minor injuries so far, we're told, thankfully. And the incident reignited the defund the police debate. So the politics dip into this now. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib tweeted this: "It wasn't an accident. Policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist. No more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed." However, an op-ed in the Washington Examiner says this shooting illustrates why it's essential to fund the police. Quote, "Don't tell the defund the police crowd, but if you want officers who are smart, empathetic, and well-trained, you're going to have to pay. On the other hand, if you want the Keystone cops to be running around with badges and guns, just do what they did in Minneapolis in December and defund the police." End quote. Jason Rantz, Seattle radio talk show host, is with me now. And Jason, I turn to you at times like this because you have seen this play out on the ground in your city. You've been in those crowds. Your first thoughts about what's unfolding in that suburb of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota?
My first thoughts were anger and disgust that we're seeing yet again the so-called summer of love, but happening earlier. It's going to result in more deaths, and it's going to result in more anger and angst. And Congresswoman Tlaib is making it worse. And I can't help but compare the images we're now seeing to what we saw just moments ago with Officer Billy Evans. You have, on the one hand, Democrats today coming together, and I'm so grateful that they are, to praise police. And yet you also have people like Tlaib and other defund politicians who are partisan ghouls who define their outrage by the dead black bodies that they use as props to forward a radical agenda to defund the police. Billy Evans lost his life protecting people regardless of their race or their religion or their gender, because that's what he signed up to do. It is undoubtedly true that officers make mistakes, and a mistake was made and it was deadly, and that officer is going to pay a price for that. But to turn to this and say this is an example of some sort of institutionalized racism that means we should be not just defunding the police, but abolishing the police, abolishing prisons. She doesn't care about these victims. She's using them for a very specific political agenda that she makes no bones about. She's not hiding it. They say that every institution in this country has been built upon white supremacy and it needs to be torn down. That's what they're trying to do. And okay, if a few communities get destroyed in the process and lives get destroyed in the process, it's for their greater good, they believe. It is soulless. It is disgusting.
I want to bring this into our discussion, Jason. Reporters are scolding the Brooklyn Center police chief for calling the unrest that we saw last night a riot. Watch.
What was your decision to issue a dispersal order while they were peacefully protesting in front of the police station?
Just so everybody's clear, I was front and center at the protest, at the riot. We did not.
It was a protest, not a riot. Don't do that. There was no riot at the
There was.
All right, so police have certain ways, Jason, I would imagine, of defining a riot. And in fact, they say what one is, and then they take different action when they see one. What do you anticipate is going on with the local media there at that press conference as you watch and hear it?
Well, what we've seen all across the country is this willingness to side with the rioters. They don't want to upset the crowd. They don't want to upset the people that they turn to for sound bites as they're covering these stories. And in so many instances, whether locally or nationally, you've got reporters who side ideologically with a lot of the underlying causes behind some of these protests that turn into riots. But the fact of the matter is, when you decline to define a riot as a riot, you are justifying the violence and destruction. You are emboldening these people to do the same things over and over and over again, and it's not going to stop. That's why it's been going on for so long in the Pacific Northwest, because of political cowardice and media members who refuse to condemn it. It's not wrong to condemn violence, the same way it's not wrong to condemn a mistake or a purposeful use of force that goes too far. It is ludicrous to me that we are still, a year after the start of the violence, refusing to call it out for what it is. What is the downside to calling out a riot a riot? I'd love to know the answer to that.
You know, it's ironic. It actually will be a year, May 25th, when George Floyd was brutally killed. And so it feels a lot longer than it has been. As you point out, it hasn't quite been a year yet. I would say this, those reporters missed an opportunity by not asking the police chief, well, how do you define a riot? There's a way to get to those answers without driving that narrative. Jason Rantz, always great to have you on the program. It's not an easy day. It's not an easy time right now. Good to have a real discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's really in charge?